Part 1. The Call of the Ocean. You are standing on the deck of a ship at night. The sea is calm, the moon shines, and the sound of waves is soft, almost like breathing. The air is warm, and the sky is filled with stars. Everything looks peaceful. Yet inside you, there is a small feeling of unease. You know these waters are not like others. You know that somewhere out here lies the Bermuda Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle is not drawn on official maps, yet sailors and pilots speak of it as if it were real. It is an area of the Atlantic Ocean, shaped like a triangle, with 3 points: Miami in Florida, San Juan in Puerto Rico, and the island of Bermuda. Inside this triangle, many ships and planes have disappeared without a trace. Some were seen, leaving port, but they never arrived. Some sent desperate radio messages, then went silent forever. Some were found floating empty, as if their crew had vanished into thin air. Tonight, in this story, you sail into that space. The triangle does not look different from any other sea. The water is still blue. The wind is the same. The stars shine with their usual light. But for hundreds of years, men and women have said that beneath this beauty, something waits. Close your eyes and imagine the first sailors to cross these waters. Wooden ships creaking under the pressure of wind and wave. No engines, no radar, no radio. Only the stars above and the compass needle pointing north. They looked across endless water and wondered what might be hiding there. Even then, before the triangle had a name, fear already existed. The ocean has always been a place of both wonder and terror. It gives food, trade, and travel. But it also takes lives, often without warning. Waves can rise like mountains. Storms can come without a cloud in sight. But the Bermuda Triangle is not feared only for storms. The mystery is deeper. It is the sudden silence, the lack of explanation, the feeling that some places on Earth do not follow the same rules as the rest. As your ship glides forward, you hear the quiet rhythm of the waves. You think about those who came before you, the explorers, the traders, the soldiers, and the fishermen. Some of them crossed safely, and nothing happened. Others vanished. Their families waited for months, sometimes years, hoping for a letter, a sign, a piece of wreckage. But often, nothing came. The story of the Triangle is not just about ships and planes. It is about the human mind. It is about how we react to mystery, how we tell stories when something cannot be explained. Some say the disappearances are only accidents, no different from any other dangerous sea. Others believe that the Triangle hides a secret, something beyond nature, something that watches. Tonight, you join this long line of travelers. You are part of the story now. The sea stretches around you, wide and endless. You cannot see the edges of the triangle, but you know you are inside it. The compass on the ship's wheel points steady, yet somehow you feel it may not be trustworthy. The radio crackles, though no one is speaking. The stars shine, but you cannot help but think, how many others looked at these same stars and never came home? The call of the ocean is strong. It is beautiful, but it is also dangerous. People have always been drawn to it, no matter the risk. That is why the Triangle remains alive in our minds. It is not only the mystery of those who vanished. It is the reminder that the world is larger than us, that there are places where answers may never come. And so, your voyage begins. The water is calm, but in your heart, you know, Calm seas do not always mean safety. Sometimes the greatest mysteries hide beneath the smoothest surface. The triangle has seen centuries of travel, centuries of questions, and centuries of silence. Tonight, you will hear its story. Part 2. Legends before the map. Long before anyone drew the Bermuda Triangle on a chart, stories were already told about this part of the sea. Sailors did not need lines and names to sense danger. They could feel it in the air, in the currents, and in the way the horizon seemed to shift. The ocean speaks in its own language, and men have always listened with fear. In the islands of the Caribbean, the native people passed down legends. They told of strange waters where the sea boiled and swallowed whole canoes. They warned of spirits that lived under the waves, voices that called to fishermen, pulling them away from shore until they never returned. Some stories spoke of islands that appeared for a day and then sank back under the surface, leaving travelers lost in open water. These tales may sound like myths, but myths often carry a shadow of truth. Perhaps these were the first whispers of the Triangle. When Christopher Columbus sailed across the Atlantic in 1492, his ships passed directly through what would later be called the Bermuda Triangle. In his journal, he wrote of strange things. He saw lights in the distance, flickering above the horizon, like a candle floating on the sea. His compass, the most trusted tool of a sailor, spun and wavered without reason. His crew grew afraid. Some whispered that they were sailing into a cursed ocean, that the end of the world was near. Columbus tried to calm them, but even he was unsettled. He called the lights a wonder, but he could not explain them. After Columbus, many ships followed the same path. The Atlantic became the highway of empires, carrying gold, silver, sugar, and people between continents. But with every year came more rumors. Ships that sailed out strong and healthy, but never returned. Vessels found drifting, with no crew aboard. Only silence and the creak of wood. Some believed it was piracy. Some said storms. But others felt it was something stranger, something the sea itself was hiding. By the 1600s and 1700s, maps of the Atlantic showed more and more trade routes crossing through the triangle. Captains tried to avoid certain areas, places where currents were unpredictable and winds died suddenly. But not every ship had a choice. The shortest route between Europe and the New World passed through the triangle's heart. And so, men sailed through with prayers on their lips. Imagine a sailor from that time. He cannot read, but he can tie ropes with his eyes closed. He has crossed the ocean before, but he has also seen friends vanish at sea. He knows the stories. Ships swallowed whole, crews never seen again, islands that vanish in mist. When he looks at the night sky, he does not see stars guiding him. He sees eyes watching him. He does not fear storms as much as he fears silence. The silence of a ship that never answers a call. In those centuries, no one called it the Bermuda Triangle. That name would come much later in the 20th century, but the legend was already alive. It grew each time a mother waited for her son, who never came home. Each time a captain was found adrift, eyes wide, unable to speak of what he had seen. Each time a ship vanished between one port and another. Legends before the map are often the truest kind of stories. They are born not from books, but from fear, from loss, from the things people cannot explain. The Triangle's legend was not created by writers in offices or scientists with theories. It was created by men who stood on wooden decks, looking out into endless water, wondering if the sea would let them live another day. And so, the triangle became more than a place. It became a shadow in the human mind, a reminder that not all of Earth's mysteries can be explained, a warning that the ocean, no matter how calm, keeps secrets. Even before the world gave it a name, the Bermuda Triangle already existed in fear, in whispers, and in the silence of those who never returned. Part 3. The first ghost ships. The ocean is full of stories about ghost ships. Not ships with white spirits moving across the deck, but ships that drift empty, silent, and abandoned. No crew, no captain, no sign of life, only the vessel itself, rocking on the water like a forgotten shell. During the 17th and 18th centuries, the seas around the Bermuda Triangle became busy with trade. Spanish galleons carried gold and silver back to Europe. British and French ships carried sugar, rum, and tobacco. Pirates hunted these waters too, chasing treasure. But among these normal dangers, something stranger was happening. From time to time, ships were found floating aimlessly, their sails torn but still upright. When rescuers climbed aboard, they found no one. Sometimes meals were still on the tables, untouched. Sometimes lamps still burned. It looked as if the crew had simply walked away. But there was no land nearby, no lifeboats missing, only silence. One of the most famous ghost ship stories in history is the Mary Celeste, though it was not lost inside. The Bermuda Triangle. Its tale became forever tied to the same mystery. In 1872, the Mary Celeste was discovered adrift in the Atlantic. The ship was in good condition, its cargo untouched, but the crew was gone. No struggle, no storm damage, nothing to explain why everyone had disappeared. The Mary Celeste became a symbol of what people already feared in the Triangle, that the sea could take people without leaving a trace. Other stories from the Triangle spoke of smaller ships, fishing boats, and even military vessels. Some were found days or weeks later, drifting with sails flapping in the wind. Others were never found at all. Mariners began marking their maps with small crosses or notes. Avoid this passage, dangerous waters, men lost here. The Triangle was building its reputation, not through science, but through human loss. Sailors are practical people. They believe in ropes, sails, and knots. But even the most practical sailor whispers stories when the night is long. Some said the ghost ships were cursed. Some believed sea monsters pulled crews into the deep. Others spoke of whirlpools, hidden currents, or storms that appeared without warning. But the truth was always the same. The sea returned only the vessel, never the people. Imagine climbing onto one of those ships yourself. The wood creaks under your feet. The sails flap. You step into the captain's cabin and see a half-written letter, the ink not yet dry. You look at the galley and see plates on the table, cups half full of wine. You wait for footsteps on the stairs, voices above deck, but nothing comes. You are alone on a ship that once carried life, now carrying only mystery. Ghost ships made sailors uneasy in a way storms never could. A storm is an enemy you can see, fight, or pray through. But an empty ship is a riddle. It tells you that something unseen can take life away at any time. And the Bermuda Triangle seemed to hold more of these riddles than anywhere else. As time passed, stories of these ghost ships became part of the Triangle's legend. Families heard the tales and shivered. Young sailors repeated them in port taverns before their next voyage. And each time a new ghost ship was found, the fear grew. Stronger. The Triangle was not only a place of storms and pirates. It was a place where the sea itself seemed to choose who would live and who would vanish. The ghost ships remind us that the ocean does not always roar when it takes something. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it simply erases. The Bermuda Triangle, in those centuries, became a canvas for silence, an endless sea that returned ships without souls, leaving the world to wonder where those souls had gone. Part 4. Flight 19 and the age of the air. For a long time, the Bermuda Triangle was a sailor's fear. Then the fear learned to fly. By the middle of the 20th century, engines were stronger, radios were common, and pilots trusted their instruments, the way captains once trusted the stars. If ships could be lost, many believed airplanes could not. They were fast, high, and guided by compass, clock, and clear procedures. But on one December afternoon in 1945, 5 planes took off from Florida and never came home. The world gave their name a shadow that still follows us. Flight 19 thought it was a training mission, not a war flight. The war had ended months earlier, but the U.S. Navy still trained new crews. 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers lifted from the Naval Air Station at Fort Lauderdale. The plan was simple on paper: fly east over the Atlantic, turn north, and back west toward Florida, 3 legs of a triangle, then land before dark. Each aircraft had fuel for many hours. Each had a radio and a compass. Their leader was experienced. The students were eager. On the ground, no one worried God at first. All was normal. The group reported position and course as planned. The sea below was calm in places, rough in others, but nothing unusual for that coast. Then, sometime after the first leg, the radios began to carry tension. A voice said the landmarks did not look right. The leader thought he saw a chain of islands that should not be there. He wondered if they had drifted off course. The compass, he said, did not help. It pointed, but he no longer trusted where it pointed. In the control room on shore, operators listened closely. They asked the leader to give a heading, to fly west toward the setting sun. Turn west and you will reach the mainland, they advised. But on the radio, doubt grew. The pilots were no longer sure whether they were north of the Bahamas or over the Florida Keys. If they were in the Keys, turning west would send them out to the Gulf of Mexico. If they were north, turning west would save them. The difference was life or death, and the sky was becoming cloudy. The minutes stretched. Fuel always seems endless at takeoff and short when you need it most. The radio carried fragments, worries about low tanks, instructions to stay together, fear of getting separated if one radio failed. Weather reports spoke of showers and falling light. The men were trained to trust procedure, but procedure needs a clear position, and position needs either a reliable compass or a landmark. They had neither. People like to imagine dramatic last words, but often the end of a transmission is not a speech. It is a sigh, or a broken sentence, or silence that never ends. The ground station tried to help, tried to triangulate signals, tried to make sense of weak bearings. Other planes took off to search. The sky grew darker, and then the radios fell. Quiet. One by one, the signals faded like lights going out at sea. A rescue plane, large, long range, and full of fuel, launched to find them. It carried a big crew and could search for hours. Not long after takeoff, That plane also vanished. A ship in the area reported seeing a fire on the water, and many later believed the rescue aircraft may have exploded. But the ocean did not return. Clear answers. The night absorbed everything got by morning. The Navy had begun one of the largest searches in its history. Ships and planes looked for days. They found no life rafts, no bodies, no floating parts of wings or tail. They found only water, wind, and waves. After so many hours, the math became cruel. Fuel would have run out. The aircraft would have had to ditch. In a calm sea, a ditching can be survivable. In a rough sea, even a strong plane can break apart. But no wreckage? That was the part people could not accept. The newspapers told the story with a mix of fact and fear. 5 planes lost, Navy baffled, mystery over the Atlantic. Radio shows repeated the most dramatic lines from the transmissions. Families listened and hoped for a miracle. Conspiracy theories appeared almost at once. Some said foreign enemies had taken the planes. Others said the Earth itself had opened. Many pointed at the map and drew a rough triangle, noting that ships and planes had disappeared in that area before. The name Bermuda Triangle was not yet famous, but the idea was now alive. Later, investigators read through all the radio logs and weather reports. They tried to follow each turn and timing. One official conclusion suggested that the leader may have believed he was somewhere he was not, and that the group, staying together as trained, followed him until fuel ran out over open ocean. Another report noted the poor weather and the chance of instrument error. The ocean is not kind to human mistakes. It punishes small errors with large outcomes. This was a sober answer, not a magical one. But the lack of wreckage kept the door open to wonder. Pilots who flew the same route in later years told their own small stories. A compass that wandered for a minute and then settled. A strange fog that wrapped the windshield and muffled the radio. A horizon that looked flat and featureless, where sky and sea merged into a gray wall. None of these events are proof of anything special. They can happen anywhere. But when they happen inside the triangle drawn in our minds, they feel heavier. The loss of Flight 19 changed the way people talked about the triangle. Before, the myths were mostly about ships. After, the sky also belonged to the mystery. Flight. Schools use the case to teach caution. Confirm your position. Trust your instruments unless you have reason not to. And if lost over water, choose a single plan and stick to it. But outside the classroom, the public memory went a different way. It remembered voices fading, compasses spinning, planes swallowed by an invisible mouth dot. Think about the men themselves. Young, mostly. Tired from training, but proud to wear the uniform. They joked on the ground and checked each other's straps. In the air, as doubt grew, they tried to stay calm and follow training. We cannot know their last thoughts, but we can honor them by telling the story with care. A mystery is not a toy. It is a place where real lives were lived and lost got in the years that followed. The Bermuda Triangle gained more attention. Books and magazines wrote about it. Some authors leaned hard into the supernatural. Others tried to explain everything with simple math. More traffic in an area means more accidents, and sea conditions can hide wreckage quickly. The truth may be some mix of the two normal risks: bad luck, human error, fast-changing weather, and a few strange events we still do not understand. Flight 19 sits at the center of that mix. It is a lesson about how quickly certainty can break down when landmarks disappear and instruments seem wrong. It is also a symbol of how a single event can shape a legend. When you think of the triangle now, you do not only see a ship with empty decks. You see 5 planes flying in formation over a wide, empty sea, their leader trying to decide between 2 choices, each with a different sky at the end. Then you see darkness, and you hear only the wind. The age of the air did not end that day. Planes still fly safely over the same route every hour. Most pilots never see anything strange. But the story of Flight 19 remains like a lighthouse with its lens covered. You know the shape is there, even if the light does not show. It reminds us that the line between skill and confusion can be thin, and that the sea and sky, even in modern times, can still swallow answers. When we look back on that December, we are not just studying a case file. We are standing at the edge of what people can explain and looking out into what they cannot. That edge is where legends are born. And it is where the next part of our journey begins. People will try to fill the silence with ideas, some careful, some wild, all human. They will ask, what causes the disappearances? Is there a pattern? A force? A place where rules are different? Search for answers begins with a simple truth. The ocean is vast, and our knowledge is small. From that truth rise many possibilities. In the next part, we step into them science, stories, and everything in between, and see how each tries to make sense of the triangle's long, quiet question. Part 5, The Sea of Theories. When people face silence, they build bridges of ideas. The Bermuda Triangle has given us a long, quiet silence, so the bridges are many. Some are made of hard science. Some are made of old myths. Some are made of hope and fear. You can think of them as rooms in a wide museum. Tonight you walk through those rooms, one by one, while your ship moves forward under a warm, dark sky. The first room is magnetism. Sailors have trusted the compass for centuries, but a compass is not perfect. It points to magnetic north, which is not the same as true north. In some places, the difference is large. In a few places, the difference changes quickly from year to year. Long ago, there was even a line through the Atlantic where magnetic north and true north lined up almost exactly. This line slowly moves over time. Imagine a captain who learned his routes a decade earlier, now crossing water where his charts and his inner habits no longer match the sky. A few degrees of error over many miles can place a ship far from where it thinks it is. If clouds hide the stars and instruments disagree, doubt grows. Doubt is a storm inside the mind, and it can push a crew off course as surely as wind. Second room is weather. The Atlantic can change in minutes. A clear morning can turn into a wall of rain by noon. Tiny storms can build sharp winds. A line of thunderstorms can throw down a burst of air so strong it hits the sea like a hammer. Pilots call it a microburst. On the water, sudden squalls push waves into broken patterns that confuse the eye and the ear. Hurricanes sometimes grow. Far out to sea, their outer bands touching ships that never hear a warning. A pilot flying low over warm water meets fog that clings to the wings like wet cloth. A captain steering by horizon loses the line where sky and sea should meet. In that empty gray, direction feels like a guess, and a guess can be fatal. Room is the ocean itself. The floor of the triangle is not smooth. It drops into trenches and rises into ridges. The Puerto Rico Trench is one of the deepest places in the Atlantic, a dark valley where light never reaches. If a ship breaks there, the sea can hide it within minutes. Currents cut like rivers. The Gulf Stream runs like a fast-moving road, carrying anything on its surface many miles away in a short time. A floating life ring that should drift near a wreck is instead pulled off like a leaf in a quick river, so searchers find only clean water and puzzle over the missing signs. There is also the Sargasso Sea, a slow, clear zone where mats of golden. Seaweed drift and winds can go quiet for days. In the age of sails, ships could be trapped there with no breeze and little water, their crews growing weak while the world stayed glass still around them. Calm can be as dangerous as storm when you need movement to live. The fourth room is human. Machines fail, but people fail first. A tired captain reads a number backward. A pilot trusts his feeling instead of his instrument because the instrument seems strange and the feeling seems normal. A mechanic misses a small crack. A radio operator hears only half a message and fills the rest with fear. The sea is a place where small mistakes cost everything. In busy waters, with many craft crossing at many speeds, accidents are expected. The ocean does not forgive them. When people say, "Why here?" others answer, "Because many ships pass here." More traffic means more loss. It is a cold answer, but sometimes cold answers are true. Then there is the room of gas and light. Some scientists have suggested that methane can rise from the seafloor in bubbles big enough to change the density of the water. If the water under a ship becomes less dense, a ship could lose buoyancy and sink fast, like a stone suddenly heavier than the sea can hold. The idea is simple to imagine. A field of bubbles, a sudden drop, a ship gone in seconds. Others argue this is rare and unlikely for large modern vessels, and hard to prove. But the story remains because it feels like the triangle itself. An invisible change, a quick end, and no trace. There is also the unquiet, private room of the mind. Some pilots and sailors have spoken of an electronic fog, a pale gray that swallows distance and sound. In the fog, radios go weak, compasses drift lazy circles, clocks seem wrong, and the body loses its sense of speed. It could be a trick of moisture and static, a natural effect that is rare but real. Or it could be fear shaping memory after a hard day at sea. Still, when you picture yourself inside that fog, you understand why people come home with stories that do not fit neat lines on a chart. That not all rooms are scientific. Some are made of old dreams. One is called Atlantis. In this room, a lost city sleeps under the water, and from it rises a force that touches our machines. Crystals hum. Power fields glow. Submarines feel the pull, and planes lose their way. Divers send back photographs of square stones that look like roads. Others see only natural rock and tricks of light. The sea keeps its secrets, and the mind fills the gaps. Whether Atlantis was ever real is almost beside the point. What matters is the feeling of a memory you cannot prove and cannot set down. Another room belongs to the sky. Strange lights are seen at odd hours. Some people say they move like living things. To believers, the triangle is a door, and lights are visitors. To skeptics, they are meteors, flares, or human aircraft seen from odd angles through mist. Between belief and doubt, there is a space wide enough to sail a fleet through. and in that space, legends anchor easily. There is also a room for portals and time. In this room, the boundary between moments thins, and a ship slides not only across water, but across hours. A pilot takes off and lands with the clock that says one thing while the world says another. A sailor thinks he has been awake only a short while and finds the calendar pages have turned. People who tell these stories are often calm, not wild. They describe soft changes, not storms. They are not trying to impress you. They are trying to explain something that felt real and left no mark. Walk further and you will find the room of numbers. Here, statisticians lay out charts. They show that the triangle may not have more disappearances per mile than other busy parts of the ocean. They point to record-keeping problems, to reports that were repeated and changed over years, to ships that were said to vanish in one place, but actually were lost in another. They ask us to be careful with memory, to separate the heat of a story from the light of a fact. This room is quiet but important. It does not close the mystery. It narrows the frame. What do you do with so many rooms? You could choose one and live there. You could say, it is only weather, or it is only human error, and close the door. You could say, it is a door to somewhere else, and close the other doors. But the triangle seems to resist that kind of answer. It is a house with many rooms and thin walls. Sometimes voices from one room drift into the next. A storm meets a mistake. A current erases a clue. A compass wobbles just when a crew is tired. Add darkness, and the sea takes its due. In the morning, the water is flat and innocent again, like a stage after the actors have left. You stand at the helm while your ship hums on. The compass needle is steady. The GPS screen shows a clean line. The radio is quiet. All your rooms of theory now live inside you. You can feel how each one tries to comfort you in a different way. Science says, there is a reason. Myth says, there is a meaning. Numbers say, it is no worse here than elsewhere. The deep says nothing at all. A thin fog begins to form, low over the water, as if the sea were cooling its breath. The stars dim just a little, as if a veil has passed in front of them. You slow your breathing and listen. Somewhere far away, thunder grumbles like a tired animal rolling over in sleep. You check the radar. A small green blot appears and fades. Was it a cloud or a glitch? You cannot tell, and that is the triangle's favorite feeling to give. Not fear, exactly -uncertainty. Still you move forward. The wake stretches behind you in two clean white lines. You remember every story you have heard tonight, every theory. You do not need to choose one. You only need to keep your course. The sea will not explain itself, but it will carry you if you treat it with care. That is the old bargain. Ahead, the fog thickens, then opens like a slow door. Through it, you see a darker band where the horizon should be. It is either a squall or a trick of night, and the only way to know is to enter it. You tighten your grip on the wheel and nod to yourself. Theories are for the mind. The voyage is for the hands. And so we leave the museum and return to the deck. In the next stretch of this journey, you do not read about other people's crossings. You make your own. You meet the triangle the way sailors always have, by moving into it 1 mile at a time, heart steady, eyes open, hoping the sea remains a teacher and not a judge. Part 6, Sailing into the Unknown Night, settles in a soft way, like a blanket pulled up to your chin. The sea around you is dark blue turning to black, with a slow silver road where the moon lays its light. The boat is steady. The engine hums, like a quiet animal asleep under the floor. The screens in the cabin glow. GPS, radar, depth sounder, radio. Little islands of green and white light in a small world of wood and steel dot. You move from deck to helm and back again, checking lines, listening to the sound of water on the hull. The wind is light and smells of salt. Far off, a single star seems brighter than the rest. You think about all the stories that brought you here. You do not feel brave or foolish. You feel present. You are not chasing danger. You are keeping company with it at a respectful distance. The first sign is tiny. The GPS trace that has been drawing a clean line across the chart pauses for a breath, then jumps forward and smooths again. It is the sort of glitch you could miss if you blinked. You do not blink. You watch. A minute later it happens again. A little skip on the map, like a heartbeat that forgot itself and then remembered. You tap the glass with a knuckle, even though you know the screen will not answer you. The line steadies. You breathe out. On the VHF radio, channel 16 is quiet. A fishing boat calls a friend on another channel and laughs about bait. A cargo ship reports a change of course in the distance. Their voices are ordinary, like voices in a hallway outside your door. You feel less alone. You say nothing, and the radio returns to its soft hiss, which is its way of saying the world is still there. That fog arrives without drama. It pools low over the water, touches your bow, and then rises, as if the sea is exhaling. The horizon turns. Faint. You can still see the stars if you look straight up. You cannot see where the sky meets the water. It is as if the world forgot to draw its edge. This is fine, you tell yourself. You have radar and lights and a horn. You slow a knot, just to be careful. The wake tightens behind you. White lines close to the stern dot. The compass card holds north, then drifts a thin degree, then returns. You know that compasses have moods. You know they do not always agree with the map or with your gut. You are trained to trust them anyway. You watch it for a long minute, and it behaves. You find yourself smiling a little at your own attention, the way a parent watches a sleeping child for signs of turning. The child sleeps. A compass holds dot in the fog. Sounds. Change shape. A wave slap feels closer. Gull's cry seems to come from the water instead of the air. Somewhere ahead, a bell rings a buoy. Most likely, but the fog hides its body. You count the seconds between rings, hoping for a pattern that matches a buoy on your chart, but the rhythm is not quite right. It could be wind. It could be wave. It could be your heartbeat, adding a beat where none exists. You step out onto the deck. The air is cooler than before. The boat's bow light cuts a shallow tunnel through the mist, and tiny drops hang in that tunnel like dust in a beam of sunlight. You hold the rail and look down. For a moment, you see green sparks skate away on the bow wave, traces of life bioluminescence waking as the water moves. It feels like the sea is drawing lines for you to follow. You know it is only plankton, shining when stirred, but it feels like a sign all the same. Back at the helm, the radar shows a small return that winks on and off. It could be a low squall. It could be clutter from the fog. It could be a small boat without a strong reflector. You reduce speed another notch, sound the horn, and aim a little to starboard. giving space to a thing you cannot see. The return fades. You hold the new course for a few minutes and then ease back to your original track. Patience is a skill. Tonight you have plenty of it. Time does something odd. You glance at your watch and think only a few minutes have passed since you last looked. The watch disagrees. You are not scared. It feels more like a film in slow motion, where every detail stretches. The mind does this at sea. It holds on to small signs and stretches them to fit the space where land used to be. You sip water, eat a cracker, and name the sounds you hear to keep your thoughts tidy. Engine hum, water slap, foghorn in the distance, your breath, the soft tick of a relay in the panel, the gentle chime of the autopilot adjusting. The autopilot ticks again and again, hardly moving the helm, just enough to keep your line. Then once it moves more than you expect, you lean in. The boat answers with a wider turn than you would like. You press standby, take the wheel, and settle the bow. The boat forgives you. You forgive the boat. You leave the pilot off for a while and steer by hand. Your hands prefer work tonight. A message scrolls across the GPS. Poor satellite geometry. It is not a phrase that carries emotion, but it lands in your chest. You steer straight by compass and by the feel of the sea under the hull. Every few minutes, the message disappears and returns again. You remember that sailors once crossed oceans with no satellites at all. You breathe and keep the wheels steady. When the fog thins, it does not go away. It changes from a wall to a sheer curtain. Behind it, shapes appear and vanish. A darker patch could be a cloud, or a rain shaft, or nothing. You sweep the light once and see only silver droplets in a tunnel again. You switch the light off. The dark is better for your eyes. The stars above brighten. The horizon is still missing. You think of Flight 19. You think of lost compasses and tired minds. You speak out loud, steady and calm, as if you are talking to a child you are guiding across a stream. We are on course. We are under control. We are fine. The words sound simple, and that is the point. Simple words can hold a mind in one. Pieced out at midnight, the sea smooths for a while. The boat glides on a surface like oil. The wake fades into a gray sheet that hardly wrinkles. In the quiet, you hear small clicks and pops from the water, tiny lives speaking in a language you will never learn. The radio hisses softly and once gives a whisper of a voice, too faint to understand. You try to tune it, but the voice is gone, and only the hiss remains. You let it be. The hiss is honest that the logbook lies open next to the chart. You write down the time, the heading, the speed, the weather. You add a note in the margin. Fog thin. Instruments steady. Small glitches on GPS. All good. You might be writing it for yourself an hour from now. You might be writing it for someone else one day, a person who wants to know what the night felt like. You write cleanly, and you close the book. A faint smell of rain reaches you before the radar shows. The smell is green, like a garden at dawn. You put on a light jacket and a cap and go forward to check the anchor gear and lines. You touch everything you care about. It is a ritual as old as boats. Hands learn the truth faster than eyes. Rain arrives in a soft sheet. It patters on the deck and turns the fog into a fine silver dust. You turn on the wipers for the forward windows and watch them sweep a metronome across your view. The radar bloom grows and then slides behind you. The rain rinses the boat, rinses your face, rinses the night. When it ends, the air is even cleaner, and the stars return in clusters, like lanterns hung along a road. Then the horizon decides to come back. It draws itself faintly, a graphite line between two shades of dark. You feel a weight lift from your chest that you did not know you were carrying. The compass looks less like a test and more like a friend. The GPS stops complaining. The autopilot steers a minute and does not overreach. You let yourself sit for the first time in an hour, and you laugh once, quietly, because you did nothing heroic, and yet you feel like you have returned from somewhere God. You pour tea and hold the warm cup in both hands. Steam rises and mixes with the last thin threads of mist. The tea tastes simple and perfect. You think about how many crossings are like this. A handful of odd moments, a few small choices, and a steady heart. Most sea stories end not with a roar but with a breath. Still, the triangle wants to send you one more lesson. A glow forms below the surface on your starboard side. It grows to the size of a table, then the size of a car. It keeps pace with the boat for a long 10 seconds, then dives and vanishes, leaving a ribbon of green sparks. You know it was likely a school of fish or a dolphin stirring plankton. You also know you will remember it as the sea itself running beside you, showing that it watches. Both truths can live together. Near dawn, a breeze picks up from the east. The fog finally lifts and folds itself into the sky, leaving the water clear all the way to the line where day will rise. You can see a distant tanker, a tiny block on the edge of vision, its deck lights soft as candles. You hail it by name from the eyes screen and wish them a safe watch. A voice answers with a friendly nod of words. You smile. The world is wide and also small. You look back at the night and see how it fit together. Nothing was dramatic. Everything mattered. The triangle did not shout. It asked questions in a calm voice. Will you trust your tools? Will you slow down? Will you stay patient when you do not know? Will you keep your mind from chasing shadows? You said yes, one small yes at a time. That is how crossings are made. The sun lifts a thin orange edge. The ocean changes color from ink to steel to a soft, forgiving blue. Flying fish skip like thrown stones. A gull draws a line behind you and then lets the wind carry it away. You take a deeper breath, and the breath feels like a beginning. You write a final note for the night in the log. Fog, light rain, minor instrument drift. Crew calm, course true. You close the book. You touch the wheel. Part 7. Survivors and Whispers. Not everyone who enters the triangle is lost. Some come home with small stories they only tell in quiet rooms. Their words are careful. They are not trying to impress. They are trying to explain a feeling that stayed with them like salt on skin. When you listen, you hear patterns, the same soft details from different mouths. The stories are not proof. They are echoes. But sometimes echoes tell you the shape of a place better than a map. A fisherman named Mateo told me his story in it. Dockside cafe at dawn. He spoke with his hands, palms up, as if offering the night back to the table. He and his son were laying lines east of Bimini when a wall of fog rose straight out of the water. It was like a door, he said. They passed through and the sea went flat, glass flat, no chop at all. Their engine sounded far away, as if someone had wrapped it in cloth. Phosphorescence lit in long green streaks beside the bow, too bright. Lanes that kept pace with them, like the water was drawing us a road, he said. They ran slow for what felt like 20 minutes. When the fog thinned, the sun was lower than it should have been. His son checked the watch, then the phone, then the boat's clock. None agreed. We did not lose a day, Mateo said. We just misplaced an hour. He shrugged and smiled without humor. We came home. That is the important part. A small air taxi pilot, Renee, flew tourists between islands for years. She described a milk-white cloud that formed in a neat box in front of her, a sharp-edged thing the size of a city block. Her altimeter froze for a full minute and jumped. The radio sounded like it was underwater. The plane did not shake. It simply felt lighter, as if someone had turned down gravity a little. When she broke clear, the runway was already ahead. The tower called, "You're early." Her log showed 35 minutes in the air on a route that usually takes an hour. Her fuel burn matched the shorter time. Maybe I had more tailwind than I knew, she said, trying to help her own memory. But then she added, or maybe time shrugged. A deckhand on a freighter swore. He heard his name carried over still water on a windless night, not shouted, not on the radio. Just his name once, as if spoken close to his ear. He turned, expecting a joke from another watchman. No one stood there. He did not report it. He finished his shift and smoked a cigarette in a corner of the deck where the stars looked like they were floating in the sea. I don't believe in ghosts, he said later, but the ocean knows my name. A diver working a survey line near the edge of the Puerto Rico Trench described a current that ran backward for 30 seconds and then let go. Like a big hand pushing, he said. On the seafloor, he saw square shapes in the limestone, edges too clean for comfort. He knew they were natural fractures and blocks, but his chest still tightened. On ascent, he heard a faint pinging through his tank, a pattern almost like Morse code. When he surfaced, the boat crew heard nothing. I filed it as equipment. Noise, he told me. Then I dreamed about it for weeks. An old lighthouse keeper from a low island spoke of a night without thunder where a flash lit the tower glass white. Every clock in the building stopped at 2:17. The radios were fine. The lights were fine. Only the clocks were wrong. He restarted them one by one and set them to the time signal, and none drifted after. He had never told anyone outside his family. It was small, he said, but it felt like being noticed. A couple on a slow sailboat kept a neat log. Their handwriting was clean, their entries even: wind, sea state, course, meals. In the middle of one page, the notes changed tone. Autopilot making very gentle turns, a man wrote. Feels like the boat is walking, the woman added. The GPS track later showed a series of wide figure eights, even though the helm was set straight. On the radio, they heard their own call sign, but not their own voice. An echo a second late, like a recording bounced back from a wall. There were no ships near enough to reflect it. They turned the radio off and on. The echo did not return. The sea gave them a normal dawn and a normal landfall. It was nothing, they said when they told it, then looked at each other. But it was not nothing. A nurse who commuted by ferry described a sound like a power line humming above the deck, except there were no lines. It lasted for a minute, then stopped. Every hair on her arm stood up. She remembered the way the coffee in her cup rippled as if a bass note had passed through it. No one else seemed to hear. She laughed at herself when she finished the story. It was probably the engines in some new mode, she said. Except the engines were idling. A sport fishing captain explained a squall line that split around his boat. He watched rain fall in sheets on both sides, the sea pocked in silver, while his own patch of water stayed dry. "I don't tell that one at bars," he said, "because it sounds like bragging. But I swear there was a clear lane, as if someone parted the curtain for us." He held his hands in front of his face and moved them apart, recreating the view he would never forget. Listen long enough, and the phrases repeat. It went quiet. The horizon disappeared. My instruments hesitated. I felt watched. Time was strange. We came home. The voices do not push. They do not demand belief. They speak like people describing a taste you have never had. They compare it to things you know, fog, static, déjà vu, and then shake their heads. Because comparisons fail, you ask gentle questions. Were you tired? Yes, but not more than usual. Could it be weather? Maybe. The weather was odd. Could it be your mind? Possibly. The mind is a strong machine. They are not stubborn. They accept that there are simple answers. But even when they say, maybe, you can hear they still carry the moment with weight dot patterns show if you draw them. Sudden fogs. Sound that travels wrong. Instruments that pause, then correct. Clocks that disagree briefly. Radio echoes. Flat water inside rough water. Currents that act like hands. Lights below the surface that keep pace then dive. Add one more pattern that no graph can hold. The feeling of being observed by something. That does not speak. There are practical voices too, full of advice. A harbor pilot named Luis said, "The sea always gives you a chance to choose the boring option. Take it," he meant. Slow down early, check again. Do not chase a clever fix. Keep your log tight. Call another vessel if you are unsure. Stand by your last good position. Hold a steady course when your mind wants to zigzag. Mystery loves hurry, he said. Don't give it that. An engineer from a cargo line gave a different rule. Treat every odd thing as two problems, one physical, one mental. Fix the physical one first. Power, cooling, connections, antennas, cables. Then fix the mental one. Sleep, food, hydration, breaks. He looked embarrassed giving advice so plain, but plain advice saves people. His crew called him checklists. They also called him lucky. When survivors speak, they often lower their voice at the end. The last sentence trails off. They sip coffee, look at the table, and lift their eyes only when you change the subject. You learn to leave a little silence so the story can sit down between you. The silence seems to relax them, as if the ocean itself had pulled up a chair and was listening with you. Not every whisper is serious. A young sailor laughed about hearing a bell where there was no buoy and said, "Maybe I was hungry," and the sea rang the dinner gong. A kite surfer swore the wind reversed for 10 seconds and pulled him toward his own wake. The triangle wanted me to high-five myself, he grinned. Humor is another way to carry a weight without dropping it. Some stories are only a sentence. Long. The stars were wrong, a woman said, and would not say more. The water tasted sweet, a man said after a rain that should have been salty with spray. I smelled roses on an empty deck, said a night watch, and then asked me not to write his name. Simple lines like notes pinned to a board. enough to mark a point and move on. You can push back if you want. You can bring out numbers. You can say the triangle is no more dangerous than any other busy sea. Many researchers say this. They point to traffic density, to storms, to human error, to the Gulf Stream speed washing away clues. They are not wrong, but numbers explain the count, not the weight. The weight lives in the people who went out, met something they cannot name, and came back changed. There is also the matter of what the sea remembers. Wreckage is rare here, not because loss is rare, but because the ocean is quick. Deep trenches swallow, fast currents carry. A life ring that should have floated beside a hull is 50 miles away by morning. A radio that should have told the last line jams with sea noise, and the last line is never heard. Survivors carry not just their own stories, but the stories the sea refused to keep for others. On our own deck, as night stretches thin, you begin to hear your mind replay the whispers you have collected. They do not scare you. They make you attentive. You check the bilge just once more. You run your hand along the shroud. You tap the compass and wait a second, not because it needs tapping, but because the gesture has become a kind of prayer. You speak the position out loud before you write it, so your ear can catch your hand if it slips. Small habits taught by other people's nights. When you lie down, you think about the role of memory in all this. Memory can bend. It can soften sharp corners and sharpen soft ones. It can stitch legend into fact when no one is watching. But memory is also how we stay alive. We remember where the shoals are, and we remember which feelings mean trouble. We remember which small noises are normal and which are not. Part 8. The endless horizon morning returns like a soft tide. The sky opens in slow colors, pearl, then cream, then a gentle blue that makes the night feel like a story you were told long ago. The sea is steady. The wake draws too clean white. Lines behind you, a quiet signature across miles of water. Somewhere far astern are the hours of fog and whispers. Somewhere ahead is clear day. You breathe in and feel both places living inside the same breath. The crew moves with easy rhythm. A kettle sings. A deckhand checks the chafe on a line and nods to himself, satisfied. You make a quick call on the radio to a cargo ship crossing your bow 2 miles out. The exchange is simple and kind, like neighbors sharing a road. Passing green to green, you agree? And the great ship slides by like a moving cliff, her hull throwing a long shadow on the bright water. For a moment, the shadow cools your deck like a hand on a warm forehead. Then it's gone. The instruments are calm today. The compass points where it should. The GPS draws a steady line. The radar paints clean targets with polite names. Buoy, fishing boat, squall 20 miles to the south. Nothing argues with anything else. But you know now that agreement is a gift, not a promise. The sea does not explain itself. It only shows itself, one page at a time, and lets you read as best you can. You think about all the rooms of theory you have walked through. Magnetism and weather, trenches and currents. The human mind with its strong engine that can save or confuse. Old dreams about lost cities. Lights that move in odd ways. Clocks that hesitate and then correct. None of those rooms shut the others out. The walls are thin. A tired pilot meets a thin fog at dusk. A compass drifts a degree when a current steals a buoy just out of sight. The Gulf Stream takes away the clues faster than people can gather them. The story becomes silence, Because the ocean is quick and deep, the triangle's mystery is not only what happens, it is how fast the sea learns to keep it. A gull paces the boat for a while, then lets the wind take it elsewhere. You look down at the water and see the color turn from deep steel to a softer blue, a sign of shallower ground ahead. The depth sounder ticks up with small, happy numbers. Somewhere far below, the slope that falls into the trench is easing back toward the shelf. It is not a border you can see with your eyes, but you feel it as a relaxation in your shoulders, as if the water were lowering its voice. You take out the logbook and read last night's lines. The handwriting is steady, even where the sea was not. You add a new entry. Dawn clear. Instruments agree. Traffic light. Course true. You draw a small triangle in the margin without meaning to. Just a memory of all the shapes the mind makes when it tries to understand a place. You shade it in and smile. The book smells faintly of salt and pencil shavings, the smell of people trying to put the ocean into words. The radio carries a weather update. A front is forming 200 miles away. It might be nothing by the time it gets here, or it might be something that keeps small boats in harbor for a day. You listen, note the time, and mark a tiny X on your chart with the pencil's soft tip. This is how most mysteries end, not with a reveal, but with a plan. If the front grows, you will alter course a few degrees to make your next day easier. If it fades, you will keep to your line. Either way, you are ready. By mid-morning, the water smooths again and the sun lifts higher. A school of flying fish skims away like handfuls of quicksilver paper. The deck warms under your boots. You make a second cup of tea and share the last of the biscuits with the mate. You talk about ordinary things, paint that needs touching. Up on the aft rail, a new gasket for the forward hatch. A friend in San Juan who just had a child. The world has room for all of this. Mystery and maintenance, questions and grocery lists. Life does not wait for answers to be certain. You remember the survivors' voices. The fisherman who said time slipped an hour. The pilot who flew through. A white box and landed early. The lighthouse keeper with his clocks at 2:17. The nurse with the humming deck. Their stories do not argue with your clear morning. They live beside it. A triangle is not a monster. It is a teacher. Sometimes the lesson is simple. Slow down, check twice, keep your hand steady. Sometimes the lesson is quieter, except you will not know. Humility is also a tool. On the horizon, a lighthouse appears like a white pencil mark. As you come closer, you can see the catwalk around the lantern room, the narrow windows, the paint right against the blue. You imagine the keeper who once lived here, walking the spiral stairs at night, setting the wicks, winding the clockworks, stepping out into wind and salt to make sure his light kept its promise. That is all navigation is in the end. Someone, somewhere, keeping a promise. A small rain shower passes and leaves the world cleaner. The sea smells like new stone. In the brief gray, you hear your engine note change, a lower, comfortable hum, and return to normal when the shower slips. Away. You mark the time without thinking, the way your hand might brush a loved one's shoulder in passing. Habit has become care, and care has become calm. You could go ashore here, tie up in the neat harbor, and walk on land that sits still under your feet. There would be coffee in a white mug, and the sound of cutlery, and perhaps a news channel on a quiet television in a corner. You would talk to a harbor pilot and two old men at the counter who have seen 30 years of seasons, and still lean forward when you say, "Tell me about the night the clock stopped." You could stay, and the world would be kind, but you could also keep going, set a new wayline, and follow it into another evening, another set of questions. That is the choice at the heart of every voyage. Dock or horizon. Safety is good. So is the part of you that wants to learn which shape the fog will take next time, and which small decision will matter. There is no right answer. There is only the next page of the book and the way you turn it. You look once more at the sea. It looks back without blinking. It has room for your ship and your doubts and your courage. It has room for the planes that did not return, and the ships that drifted empty, and the families who kept the lamp in the window longer than anyone advised. It has room for careful research and wild stories, for numbers and for poems. It does not choose a side. It keeps the balance by keeping its distance dot as the sun leans toward afternoon. You write one more line in the log. It is not required by any rule, but it belongs here. Crossed, learned, unchanged outside, changed inside. You close the book and rest your hand on its cover for a quiet second. The deck creaks. The water lifts you and sets you down again, as gentle as breath. The Bermuda Triangle does not end when you leave its lines on a map. It travels with you in the form of attention. You step more carefully now, not because you are afraid, but because you respect the place where the world does not answer quickly. You will carry that respect into every harbor, every watch, every calm morning. It will make you slower to rush, kinder to your crew, more patient with your own doubt. If there is a treasure here, that is it. The horizon runs straight in front of you, flawless as new paper. You could draw any line across it, and the sea would let you try. You could also let it be, and just look, and let your eyes rest. The engine hums. The kettle cools. A single cloud slides across the sun and moves on, leaving the light exactly as it was. When night comes again, it will come in the old way, slowly, gently, with room for every thought you have gathered. You can let those thoughts settle like silt in calm water. You do not need to lift them up again. The ocean will hold them for you. Close your eyes if you want, and listen as the hull speaks in soft knocks and sighs. You are moving. You are safe. The mystery is wide, but so are you. Sleep if you wish. The watch is steady. The line is true. The endless horizon is not a promise of loss. It is a space big enough for your questions and for your rest.